can bear anything as long as I'm with you sometimes. I don't care what you do, but please, don't send me away. There's nothing I wouldn't do to stay with you. Please, please.
Do you believe that love can drive a person to the brink of insanity? This isn't your typical romantic cruise story, but rather a documentary of two hearts tearing each other apart. When passion turns into a slow-acting poison, they choose the most explosive way to nail each other to the crucifix of love. The story unfolds on a cruise ship bound for India. Nigel and Fiona, a British couple plagued by the 7-year itch, embark on this journey in an attempt to rediscover the passion that has been slowly vanishing from their marriage. Their love is like the calm surface of the sea, appearing peaceful, while actually concealing deep-seated exhaustion and confusion. On the ship, Fiona encounters a seasick woman while using the restroom. She possesses a graceful silhouette and a beautiful face, and though she appears slightly haggard from the seasickness, her charm remains impossible to hide. Acting on gentlemanly instinct, Nigel assists the woman to the deck for some fresh air. This chance encounter is like a pebble thrown into a still lake, sending out ripples across the surface. That evening, Nigel suggests going to the ball with his wife for a few drinks, hoping to use a slight buzz to repair their increasingly distant relationship. However, Fiona refuses, as she believes it isn't healthy for an old married couple to be constantly glued to one another. After escorting Fiona back to their room, Nigel heads to the ball alone. On the dance floor, he spots the seasick woman from earlier that day once again. Now she is draped in a sultry dress, dancing with a swaying and elegant grace across the floor, as if she has become the focal point of the entire room. Nigel's gaze is deeply captivated by her, and the woman seems to notice, taking the initiative to sit down beside him. Nigel musters up the courage to strike up a conversation with her.
You remember this afternoon in the loo?
The loo? Is it your usual pick-up routine? Of course I remember. I have a perfect memory. When I feel like it.
But Nigel's clumsy pickup lines cause Mimi to quickly lose interest, and after dropping a few sarcastic remarks, she leaves without looking back. Left wanting more, Nigel gazes out at the sea with eyes full of disappointment. Right at that moment, a man in a wheelchair appears. His name is Oscar, and he is Mimi's husband. Oscar keenly perceives that Nigel seems to harbor unusual feelings for his wife, and a subtle hint of cunning flashes through his eyes. Upon having his thoughts exposed by Oscar, Nigel's first instinct is to flee. Although Nigel feigns ignorance on the surface, he is internally consumed by curiosity regarding this strange couple. Ultimately, Nigel follows Oscar to his room. Little does he know that this single step draws him into a vortex of emotions filled with turbulent waves. After downing a glass of liquor, Oscar begins to tell Nigel the story of him and his wife Mimi. On an autumn day in Paris, aboard the number 96 bus, filled with noisy crowds and the roar of engines, is where they first met. At that moment, Mimi's eyes are full of helplessness as she worries about not having a bus ticket. Upon witnessing this scene, Oscar feels a surge of pity, and while no one else is looking, he quietly hands his ticket to Mimi, resulting in his own removal from the bus for fare evasion. In that instant, Mimi's unique aura deeply captivates Oscar. From that point forward, his heart is entirely occupied by this strange woman. Oscar has always wanted to be a writer, and because he inherited his grandfather's estate, he moved to Paris. He imagines that this world-renowned city of romance will grant him endless inspiration. But since his chance encounter with Mimi, he is unable to devote himself fully to his writing, and his prose gradually becomes forced and artificial. This woman has caused him to lose all his inspiration, making him loud and restless. He frequently visits the station where he first met Mimi, hoping for a second encounter. However, in the vast ocean of people that is Paris, trying to find one specific person is like searching for a needle in a haystack. But fate seems to be exceptionally kind to Oscar. One day, shortly after, while dining at a restaurant, he finally encounters the woman who has been haunting his dreams once again. This time, Oscar gathers his courage and begins a conversation with Mimi. Perhaps the threads of fate have been quietly entwining, as on this evening, intoxicated by a gentle breeze, Oscar and Mimi go to their appointed meeting place. They talk and laugh heartily, as Oscar uses his natural romance and enthusiasm to successfully pull at Mimi's heartstrings. Mimi had even carefully kept the ticket stub Oscar gave her back then. After several dates, Oscar naturally brings Mimi back to his residence. Since then, their lives have become like a lit bonfire, intense and blazing. They fall into a passionate love, where every morning begins with tender gazes at one another, and every night ends in a deep embrace. As love grows wildly like vines, binding them tightly together. Mimi even resigns from her job. They linger together day and night, as if the world consists only of the two of them. They immerse themselves in an ocean of love and desire, never tiring and unwilling to be apart for even a single moment. That life overflowing with passion leaves both Oscar and Mimi deeply obsessed. Listening to Oscar's explicit love stories, Nigel finds himself both embarrassed and curious. Yet, as a gentleman, he still advises Oscar not to disclose such private details to a stranger he has only just met. Because he fears his wife might worry, Nigel suppresses his burning desire to keep listening and pushes the door open to leave. After bidding Oscar farewell, Nigel's mind is a complete mess. Perhaps because Oscar's story has stirred the hidden desires within him, he gently removes Fiona's glasses after returning to their room and then kisses his wife's cheek. The next day, Nigel shares the stories from the previous night with Fiona, as if he were just trading gossip. Fiona expresses nothing but contempt for Oscar's lack of self-respect. They meet again during lunch. At the dining table, Oscar shamelessly praises Fiona's unique beauty, while Mimi secretly teases Nigel under the table. Once lunch is over, Nigel can hardly wait to return to Oscar's room, desperately wanting to know what happened next between Oscar and Mimi. During the peak of their honeymoon phase, Oscar and Mimi's passion burns with such intensity that they engage in all sorts of wild acts that normal people would find too embarrassing to mention. This continues until Nigel can no longer bear to listen. But at this moment, Oscar is nearly obsessed, and it feels less like he is telling Nigel a story and more like he is reminiscing about a beautiful past that will never return. From then on, to ensure they maintain a sense of novelty for one another, they try increasingly provocative games every day, to the point where even physical pain becomes a catalyst for their desire. Their behavior becomes increasingly uncontrollable, as if they intend to burn through every inch of each other's bodies before the passion fades. They remain indoors for an entire month without stepping outside. However, once these toys lose their charm, the blazing fire is destined to burn out. As time passes, Oscar loses the initial excitement he felt for Mimi's body. Everything that once made him feel intoxicated has now become mundane and unextraordinary. He even begins to feel resentful that Mimi cannot provide any intellectual resonance for his writing career. Oscar has already started to grow tired of this relationship and weary of Mimi's constant presence, allowing his selfish and cold heart to be fully exposed. Oscar no longer hides his changes, openly being intimate with other women right in front of Mimi, without any regard for her feelings. To get Oscar's attention, Mimi also finds a man in a bar. Seeing their behavior become increasingly intimate, Oscar is instantly struck by a wave of jealousy and leaves the bar alone. Seeing Oscar sulking, Mimi asks him in confusion why he is upset. "You were the one flirting with other women first, and I simply did the same thing. So why are you abandoning me?" she asks. But Oscar argues back, saying, "We were just sitting and talking, while you were on the verge of sleeping with that man."
I don't want anyone.
Because of this incident, a rift appears in their relationship, and even when they engage in the same wild activities, the inner passion can no longer be reignited. Just as Nigel is becoming immersed in Oscar and Mimi's twisted love story, the door is suddenly pushed open. Upon seeing Mimi, Nigel loses his composure, becoming nervous and even starting to stutter. After Oscar exposes their shared interest in Mimi, Nigel flees the room in shame. After returning to his room, he remains unable to regain his calm. In truth, Fiona has seen everything Nigel has been doing, but out of respect for their years of marriage, she chooses not to expose the hypocrisy of this man on the spot. However, the very next day, as Nigel is passing through the hallway, Mimi suddenly appears and blocks his path. Mimi tells Nigel that she cares deeply about his opinion of her, and to prove her innocence, she invites Nigel to her room that evening. Although Nigel hesitantly refuses, the moment he looks into Mimi's sultry eyes, he completely forgets his responsibilities to his wife. Throughout the entire afternoon, he is utterly distracted. Finally, after making up an excuse to his wife, he enters Mimi's room with the guilt of a thief. The room is incredibly dim, with only a faint light filtering through the porthole. Nigel sits gently on the edge of Mimi's bed, eagerly taking her hand and leaning down to kiss it. Nigel is absolutely furious at being played by them. His mask of a gentleman is easily stripped away by the pair, leaving his ugly, true face completely exposed. All of his shame transforms into rage, as it was his own desire that led him into such a pathetic situation. But Oscar has long anticipated Nigel's current reaction.
Mimi wants you to hear the rest of our story. She thinks it'll help her chances with you.
Oscar confesses that his body now has defects, and he can no longer provide happiness for Mimi. Yet Mimi still possesses the right to seek it elsewhere. He hopes that Nigel can take his place, and the only condition for Nigel to have Mimi is to finish listening to the rest of the story. Even though Nigel denounces Oscar as vulgar, he still refuses to leave. He dares not face the deepest desires of his heart, yet he is also unwilling to give up this chance to possess Mimi. He begins to grow bored with Mimi, no longer possessing the same fiery passion as before. Endless complaints become a daily occurrence, and their only interaction every day is huddling in front of the television, using the ambiguous plot lines of lovers in dramas to stimulate their hormones. Gradually, Oscar begins to find Mimi intolerable, and any of her actions trigger a sense of disgust within him. The phrase Mimi says most often to Oscar changes from "I love you" to "You don't love me anymore." However, Oscar always has zero patience for this, his mouth filled with foul language as he tells Mimi that if she feels he doesn't love her, she is free to leave at any time. Finally, Mimi can no longer endure Oscar's coldness, and one day while Oscar is dining with friends, Mimi intentionally makes a fool of him. Their conflict erupts completely after they return home, and in a fit of rage, Mimi packs her bags, feigning a total break from the relationship. Yet, facing this scene, Oscar remains cold and doesn't offer a single word to ask her to stay. Under the weight of Oscar's cold violence, Mimi ultimately surrenders. Amidst Mimi's humble pleas, Oscar eventually softens his heart and agrees to let her stay. But a broken relationship that has lost its sense of novelty can never be mended. After losing all interest in Mimi, Oscar would rather spend money on other women than have any contact with her. The relationship has reached the edge of its end and cannot withstand even the slightest disturbance. Even if they carefully try to maintain it, they can only slow down the speed of its inevitable explosion. One morning, they have another argument that even turns physical. The hands that once tenderly sheltered her have now become weapons used to hurt her, and the kisses that were once sweet have turned into vicious curses. Their relationship has become completely distorted. But seeing the worry in Oscar's eyes, Mimi feels that perhaps Oscar still has feelings for her, so she chooses to forgive him once again. That day, they go to the amusement park where they had their first date, and under the sunlight, Mimi reveals a long-lost smile. Perhaps it is the scenery of the moment that reminds her of the man who was once overly obsessed with her. But it is precisely the misery of the present that highlights the beauty of the memories. Ultimately, Oscar still hardens his heart and proposes a breakup. This time, no matter how bitterly Mimi pleads with him, he no longer softens his stance. After they part ways, Oscar quickly resumes his normal life, while Mimi falls into the quagmire of heartbreak. Late one night after Oscar returns home, he actually sees Mimi curled up in front of his door like a little animal begging for mercy. To avoid affecting the neighbors, he helplessly brings her into the house. And in order to reconcile with Oscar, Mimi once again kneels before him, disregarding all of her bottom lines. Her dignity has been crushed to pieces in this pathological romance, but all this brings is pity, not love. Mimi's humility instead triggers the dark, sadistic side of Oscar. Although he lets Mimi stay, it is not because he intends to love her. He intentionally calls out other women's names while being intimate with Mimi. Faced with the dinner Mimi has painstakingly prepared for him, he responds only with cutting mockery. To create a sense of novelty for Oscar, she cuts off her long hair. But despite her making such a huge sacrifice, Oscar pretends not to notice, and even tells a friend on the other end of the phone to find a few more women for tonight, going so far as to humiliate Mimi in front of his friend. He makes Mimi dress up like a maid to clean his room, doing this only to force Mimi to leave him of her own accord. But things do not go as planned, and shortly after, Mimi discovers she is pregnant. She originally thinks this child could be the turning point to salvage their relationship and bring Oscar back to her side. But after learning the news, Oscar doesn't show the slightest hint of joy, instead using flowery words to persuade Mimi to go to the hospital for a termination, completely disregarding her feelings. Under Oscar's persistent pressure, Mimi finally chooses to compromise out of helplessness. After the termination, Mimi is physically and mentally exhausted, and Oscar promises her that once she is discharged, he will leave this place with her. But Oscar secretly abandons her at her most vulnerable moment. Using the excuse of checking on the luggage, he gets off the plane and leaves Mimi alone in the abyss of pain. Hearing this, a surge of pity for Mimi wells up inside Nigel, and he can no longer bear to listen to this subhuman man continue his story. As he pushes the door open to leave, he discovers Mimi standing right outside. Nigel cannot help himself and leans in for a kiss. After leaving Mimi, Nigel sees his wife in the lobby, laughing and chatting with a complete stranger. On the journey back, he remains deeply resentful of his wife's behavior, subsequently informing Fiona in a roundabout way that she must keep her distance from other men. But Fiona doesn't back down an inch in the face of this. On this day, Fiona is seasick and vomiting uncontrollably, which makes it impossible for her to attend the ball tonight. She gradually begins to feel that this trip has failed to reignite the feelings they have lost. But Nigel has absolutely no intention of comforting his wife right now, and after a few words of arguing, he feigns anger and storms out of the room just to find Oscar and hear the rest of the story. After successfully shaking Mimi off, Oscar feels a sense of immense relief, and unwilling to give up the entire forest for a single tree, he resumes his life of decadent luxury. Any woman on any street in Paris becomes a new target for Oscar's hunt. Having regained his freedom, Oscar spends every second enjoying the thrill of being single. 2 years after his separation from Mimi, Oscar completely gives up on writing and becomes nocturnal, sleeping all day and going out all night. This continues until one day, after a night of revelry, Oscar gets into a severe car accident on the road and is rushed to the hospital for emergency treatment. When Mimi learns of this news, she goes to the hospital ward, and as she looks at the injured Oscar lying in the hospital bed, the resentment in her heart instantly surges to the surface. Those days of being heartlessly abandoned and humiliated by Oscar are like sharp blades piercing her heart. She decides to take revenge, wanting Oscar to taste the pain of being hurt as well, so she drags Oscar off the hospital bed with a single pull. This fall leaves Oscar paralyzed from the waist down, confining him to a wheelchair for the rest of his days. From that point forward, Mimi and Oscar continue to live in the same house, but their relationship undergoes a world-shaking transformation. Now, it is Mimi's turn to be in charge of everything, and she begins to retaliate against Oscar exactly as he once treated her, bringing different men home every day and reveling in front of him night after night. She uses a syringe she found on the floor to give Oscar injections, intentionally humiliating him. She bathes Oscar with cold water. Looking at his expression of agony, there isn't a single shred of pity in her heart. She even sings and dances with other men right in front of Oscar, basking in her freedom to the fullest. To all of this, Oscar can only watch helplessly, as he is unable to resist and unable to escape. On Oscar's birthday, Mimi goes as far as to give him a handgun as a gift. This gun seems to serve as a mockery of their twisted relationship, and it is also Mimi's final gift to Oscar. Oscar looks at the handgun with a heart full of complex emotions, knowing that the grievances between them have reached a point of no return. Yet shortly after, they unexpectedly walk down the aisle together. Perhaps the hatred in Mimi's heart has been fully vented, and even now, she still deeply loves this bad man. As Nigel listens to everything Oscar recounts, his heart remains unsettled for a long time, and his obsession with Mimi grows even more intense. Meanwhile, the ball on the cruise ship is currently in full swing. Nigel believes that having finished the story of Mimi and Oscar, Mimi now belongs to him. But to his surprise, Mimi rejects him. Not far away, Fiona and Oscar are watching Nigel's every move. Fiona perceives Nigel's unusual intentions toward Mimi, leading her to feel dissatisfied, and she ultimately steps forward to dance passionately with Mimi in an attempt to catch Nigel's attention. However, to everyone's astonishment, a strange emotional vibration develops between Fiona and Mimi during the dance. They are attracted to one another as an ambiguous atmosphere fills the air, and they ultimately end up spending the night together in a room. Meanwhile, having gained nothing, Nigel gets dead drunk. He has been playing the role of the pranked player in Oscar and Mimi's game all along. When he wakes from his stupor, he finds his wife missing, and after searching everywhere, he knocks on Oscar's door. However, the sight before him leaves him breathless as he sees Mimi and Fiona lying stark naked in bed together. In Oscar's eyes, this scene might be a symbol of beauty and elegance, but in Nigel's heart, there is only rage. Nigel furiously seizes Oscar by the throat, only to be pushed back by the cold barrel of a gun in the very next second. Next, Oscar points the handgun at Mimi, and with 2 gunshots, Mimi falls into a pool of blood. This entanglement of love taking place on the cruise ship finally ends in the most horrific tragedy. The relationship between Nigel and Fiona also plunges into a deep mist because of this sudden turn of events. The movie Bitter Moon is like a sharp scalpel, dissecting the complex relationship between love and desire, as well as the struggle and downfall of human nature. The love between Oscar and Mimi, from the initial overflow of passion to the subsequent mutual harm until the final destruction, is like a magnificent yet cruel dream. They sink deeper and deeper into the vortex of love and desire, unable to extricate themselves, and ultimately lose their sense of self. Oscar's selfishness and coldness are fully displayed after he grows tired of Mimi. To satisfy his own desires, he does not hesitate to hurt a woman who deeply loves him. Mimi also becomes lost between love and hate, and after being abandoned by Oscar, she chooses the most brutal method of revenge, pushing both herself and Oscar into an abyss from which there is no return. As for Nigel and Fiona, they were originally bystanders to this tragedy, but they also become deeply embroiled in it due to their own greed and desire. In conclusion, if it is not mutual love, cutting one's losses in time is the best choice. Thank you for watching another great movie with me, and I will see you in the next episode.